Okay, I think we're good. I'm dressed for the outside. It's hot, it's sunny, and I'm trying to stay out of the sun. I have a tendency towards skin cancer, so that's not good. Before I go back out, I want to do a quick video. This morning we heard news about New Zealand. New Zealand, south of the equator, so southern hemisphere. Let me just bring up the summary. I will need my glasses for this. I'll just read this to you, and then we'll talk about this a little bit. So this is just news. This is just happening. The New Zealand Parliament passed the Climate Change Response Amendment Bill. This law explicitly blocks individuals and groups from bringing civil tort claims, basically harm, claims against corporate entities for damages or losses caused by greenhouse gas emissions, also called global heating. So key mechanics of the law. There's a couple of bullet points here. This is AI. I just did a quick look-up summary. Key mechanics of the law. Tort Liability Shield. It amends the Climate Change Response Act from 2002 to prohibit courts from finding businesses or individuals liable under common law torts such as negligence, nuisance, or proposed climate duties of care. Okay, meaning you knew what you were doing. For climate-related harms. That's the core of the thing. That's the core of the thing. It amends the Climate Change Response Act of 2002 to prohibit courts from finding business or individuals liable under common law torts such as for negligence, nuisance, or proposed climate duties of care for climate-related harms. Bingo. They got what they wanted. Retroactive application. Had to have that, right? The restriction applies to both future claims and ongoing legal proceedings. Context and catalysts. So why did this happen? The Smith versus Fonterra case. The primary driver behind the legislation was a high-profile lawsuit filed by Maori leader. The Maori, I may be mispronouncing it, are the natives of New Zealand. Okay, they're basically Polynesians. And you know they live in New Zealand. They're part of the government. The whole thing, right? Anyway, it was filed by a Maori leader and climate activist Mike Smith against 6 of New Zealand's major corporate emitters, including dairy giant Fonterra and energy company Z Energy. So the natives of New Zealand went after 2 of the biggest 6 corporations in New Zealand as contributing to global heating. I should have closed the doors. My wife is in here now. There is a Supreme Court precedent. The Supreme Court of New Zealand has cleared Smith's case to proceed to trial in early 2024, setting the stage for a landmark common law climate trial scheduled for 2027. The new law effectively shuts down that lawsuit. So there you go. So the lawsuit was shut down not by the courts, because the courts had cleared the lawsuit. I guess I gotta close the door. Hold on. All right, I'm sorry about that. I should have done that in the first place. I just wanted to get in here and do this quickly and get out. So here we are. So the courts allowed the lawsuit to go forward. So the courts, looking at New Zealand law and probably common law and a bunch of other things, said, this lawsuit has merit. So they allowed it to go ahead. And that was the Supreme Court of New Zealand. So this had already been litigated. Like, you can't sue us. You can't sue us. You can't sue us. And so after going through all the appeals processes and all the findings and all the discovery and everything else, they got to the Supreme Court of New Zealand, and the Supreme Court of New Zealand said, sure, you can sue them. So that's the top, right? They got all the way to the top of the judicial system, and the judicial system said you have standing to sue. Now, that doesn't mean the suit's going to win. It's just finding standing. Yes, you have standing. Your suit is can go forward as presented. Okay. And because the suit was allowed to go forward as presented, the legislation, the Parliament passed a law saying that you can't do that. The court said it was fine. Go ahead and sue them. Doesn't mean you'll win, but go ahead and sue them. The Parliament said you can't sue them, which is different than the court system saying go ahead with the lawsuit. The Supreme Court of New Zealand had cleared Smith's case to proceed to trial in 2024, setting the stage for a landmark common law climate trial scheduled for 2027. The new law, just passed recently, effectively shuts down that lawsuit. Now remember, this would be a landmark common law climate trial. Landmark. This, had it gone to trial and had all the discovery process worked out and had the scientists been brought in to testify and had all the harms been laid out, right, point by point, then this would have become a precedent for other countries, other activists or other groups of people in other countries to pursue similar lawsuits in each of those countries. So now this is a precedent that someone can point to and say, this is how we're going to handle these lawsuits in the future. Okay? Government rationale. So here's the government's reason for intervening to pass a law to not allow lawsuits of this kind, which is, I don't think I've ever heard of something like that. I don't think I've ever heard any example of a government saying you can't sue another party on certain grounds. Now, there might be something obscure in there about certain types of free speech or something like that. I know that free speech is protected. So free speech is protected by law. Free speech is protected by court decisions. Okay, so there may be laws that that protect things or prevent for certain things from happening. There are laws against slavery, for example. So they passed a law that you couldn't own another person. So there are laws about human behavior and what you can and cannot do or shouldn't say or could say. But this is kind of the first I've heard of that says you can't sue someone for negligence. Essentially, you can't do it. If they were negligent, it doesn't matter. If they were duplicitous, it doesn't matter. If they broke some other law that's on the books, actually, in this particular case of climate emissions, CO2 emissions, it doesn't matter. You can't sue them. You see where this is headed? This is headed a very particular direction. Okay? The government rationale. Why did the government do this? Why did the government make these very specific types of lawsuits illegal in the nation of New Zealand? Justice Minister Paul Goldsmith stated that civil litigation created investment uncertainty for businesses. Did you catch that? Did you catch that? That certain businesses that are emitting CO2 into the atmosphere, that are causing harm, their profits, what is the exact word here? Investment uncertainty for businesses. Their business model could be impacted by the threat that they could be sued now or later for harms created by their emitting greenhouse gases. So this was protecting an entire class of businesses from litigation for harm. Oh, and even not even harm. The prospect of being sued for harm would damage their reputation, their products, their business, their branding, right? We don't want to interfere with any business that's in the CO2 emitting business. And now here's a law that says you can't interfere with that. Legislative supremacy. The coalition government of New Zealand argued that complex systemic issues like climate change should be managed nationally by Parliament via mechanisms like the emissions trading scheme rather than piecemeal through common law courts. Now, there are enormous numbers of examples of parliaments and congresses, as we have here in the U.S. There's legislative bodies. There's countless examples of legislative bodies explicitly deciding that a certain type of behavior or a certain type of corporate behavior or owning slaves or countless, millions of harmful things that people and corporations and people in corporations do, that those were fine, or that we're not going to legislate against those. And in many cases, for example, with slavery, the only reason those very same government bodies and entities ever came along later and either amended the Constitution or passed laws against a certain behavior was because of lawsuits. All right? So when the people get fed up with what the government is not doing, because the government is full of corrupt people, right? You can buy them. You can buy some local politicians around here for a dinner, for just for a meal. You know, a $200 meal, sitting around the table, drinking expensive wine, smoking expensive cigars, and by the end of the meal, you got what you want from the government. Our local governments are so breathtakingly corrupt that you can't get anything done at the local level. And it doesn't get much better at the highest levels, although oversight is a little bit better. But there are entire legislative bodies that fought change for hundreds of years before finally, from the grassroots, through lawsuits or protests, right, or civil disobedience, you know what's going on out there, right? Lawsuits or civil disobedience or protests or a groundswell of revolution, they finally did something. Okay? So what the New Zealand Parliament is saying is that leave it to us. Leave it to us. Don't allow the history of malfeasance in government, protecting corporations, protecting the crown, and protecting liberties of corporations to do whatever they want, and protecting bribery and corruption, Don't allow our long and fabled history of basically fucking people over. Don't let that get in the way of your hope that we will eventually do something to save you from global heating. Because that's all you got now in New Zealand. And pretty soon, that's all you're going to have in places like America. In fact, I'll even go out on a limb. The New Zealanders, the government of New Zealand, got the idea from America, probably, or at least American lobbyists, who said, "Don't let this go through." And now that it's happened in New Zealand, it's going to very, very, very quickly and very silently. Mum's the word, right? Don't tell anybody we're doing this. Don't let them find out what we're doing here. New Zealand did it in a very public way, but we're not going to be public about this. Just mum's the word, right? So they're going to very quietly sleaze this type of legislation into position. Opposition and criticism. Separation of powers. Critics and legal scholars expressed concern over Parliament intervening to nullify an active case already cleared by the Supreme Court. That was my first point. The lawsuit, as constructed, was approved by the justice system. Doesn't mean they're going to win, but the lawsuit itself, as defined and as argued, was allowed by the Supreme Court after however many levels of review, was allowed by the Supreme Court to go forward as a lawsuit. And that right there, that was already too much. And so the legislative body got involved to make that type of lawsuit illegal against corporations and individuals. Remember that last part. Corporate influence. Environmental organizations. Let me try that again. Environmental organizations, including Greenpeace, argued the retrospective law amounts to corporate capture and shielded major polluters from accountability for infrastructure and environmental damage. So the legislature, the parliament, belongs to the corporations. There's like 6 major corporations that are identified as CO2 emitters in New Zealand. And what do you think they did? What do you think those 6 corporations did? Do we even have to discuss this? Is this even a topic? What do you think they did? We don't even have to go there, do we? We don't have to even talk about it. We know exactly what they did. So that's what happened in New Zealand. Now, on the larger picture, I'm going to see if I can go through this quickly because I don't want to be in here doing this right now. The larger picture, I did a video. Let's see, I think I even have it up here. When was it? Well, now I don't see it. I pasted a link in the description so you can go back and find it. It's weird, I don't see it. Because I wanted to mention it. Okay, doesn't matter. I did a video some months back in like February or March, about basically that the elites are going to win. They're going to win. And we are going to lose. And if you were one of those elites and you suddenly realized, oh, actually people are catching on. Oh, wait, I'm living in the middle of Silicon Valley in my mansion, but I'm still in Silicon Valley. People know my address. Oops, I'm living in paradise. People know where I live. Oops, I'm living in the countryside in England. People can still find me. So these people are going to have to run away. And they're not only going to run away from an angry mob, they're also going to run away from lawsuits. Right? If it's an angry mob, but they've got lawyers and you've got lawsuits, right? So they're going to run away from angry mobs and lawsuits, and they're going to change their operational footprint. Moving into just to summarize the video I did, moving to the north doesn't save them, because most of the countries in the north have extradition treaties. They have modern legal systems. There's less corruption. I mean, there's still a lot of corruption, but there's less corruption than a lot of other places. And so what you want to do is not flee north, because you're not going to get away. Instead, you want to flee south. Now, the problem with fleeing south to get away from the mob and the lawsuits and the findings and the discovery process and all that is you have to flee to the south. But there's not much land in the south. There aren't many countries in the south. And there's only a few places where, as a wealthy elite, one of the one percenters, it's still a lot of people, by the way. The one percenters is really not the target. It's just easy for me to put that in a title. That's still 80 million people. The actual target here is more like 8 million people, which is the 1/10 of 1%. And it may even be 8,000 people. It's a small number of people who are now running away from the mob and the lawsuits and the discovery process and all that, okay? It's like 8,000 people, which is 1/100th of 1% of the population. So they are now on the run. And they're on the run deliberately. People aren't chasing after them in the streets, while they're trying to escape. They're escaping ahead of all this. And in my video, I'll get to the point here in a minute. There's basically 4 places in the South where you can run to, that people have historically run to. So this is a historical pattern. So these nations are already set up for this. They're ready to go. They've got the cultural attributes. They've already got the financial system set up for people who are running away from the law. And those 4 places are, in no order of importance or viability, by the way, Argentina, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. Those were the 4 I talked about, because I think those are the 4 valid places. They are as far away from the north as possible, so it's going to be hard to get there. They are as corrupt as possible. So if you come down there with hundreds of millions of dollars, or even less than that, tens of millions of dollars, then you own the place, pretty much. Whatever you want to do. And break any laws you want to. Any law you want to. You can break the law, and you'll be fine. You can buy the legislation, you can buy the parliament, okay? And then you can buy legislation. That's what I was trying to say. You can buy the government, and then you can buy legislation to suit yourself. And it can even be custom to you, what you want to have happen or not happen, because you own the place, right? So I did that video, and it was a long video. It was actually scripted. I actually did do quite a bit of research. And I just ran down the list of reasons you might want to go there if you're that type of person, and what are the advantages of the different places you might go. And Argentina has been in the news recently because Peter Thiel, an oligarch here in the U.S., fled to Argentina. We don't know why. He didn't have a press conference, say, well, I'm heading to Argentina, and here's the reasons, right? He just upped sticks and went, right? So now Peter Thiel is in Argentina. Huh, well, that's interesting. Now we have New Zealand in the headlines. going to make it easy for these people to recognize New Zealand as the place you go. Because if you go to New Zealand, you can't sue these people for their contributions to global heating. Right? So they're good. You can't sue corporations and individuals. So New Zealand is setting itself up. This is almost like marketing. It's almost like marketing, right? They're setting themselves up as the go-to place. This is, okay, you're an individual, and you're wondering, maybe you have some exposure in Europe or the UK or the US or any other civilized place. Well, not that the US is all that civilized, but you know what I'm saying, right? That you've got a problem where you are now, and you're looking like, oh, where can I go? Well, according to Cougar, I can go to Argentina, South Africa, Australia, or New Zealand. So you start doing your research, and then you find out that New Zealand has already indemnified you against any lawsuits ever coming to you as an individual or as a corporation. And there's a lot of doctors and people who have incorporated themselves. So you can't come after their assets because they're a corporation, but you also can't come after their assets as a person. So that's it. The decision is made, right? You're heading for New Zealand. And then why do they care? Well, they get the money. Now you're in New Zealand, and you're going to have to build a mansion, and the mansion is going to have to be a fortress, and you're going to have all these services and all these guards and all these people who work for you, and you're going to be going into town, spending your money, so we can have Michelin 3-star restaurants right downtown. Our little village, it's famous for its wool, right? Our little village, famous for its wool, or maybe it's wine or something like that, suddenly has hundreds of oligarchs coming down into the village every day, right? Or riding on their horse like the lords they are, coming down to the little village and having the wonderful brie and the wonderful foie gras and the wonderful wines. And, that's money. Looks like money to me. And so our little village is suddenly one of the wealthiest places on the earth. Not that you'd know it if you looked at it, because it's very quaint and it's very tidy. And the people are very well behaved and well dressed, and they have perfect manners, and and they deport themselves well, and you'd never know that we're the richest place on earth, but we're the richest place on earth. Because everybody wants to come here, and they bring their money when they do, and they eat the foie gras, and they pay a lot for it. Because that's what are they buying? They're not buying the foie gras. They're not buying the vintage wine. I mean, they're buying the security. That when you're in New Zealand, no one's going to fuck with you. Right? And so it's not going to take the Australians very long to figure that out. Oh, look what the Kiwis just did. Huh. Well, that's interesting. Why'd they do that? Oh, that's why they did that. Uh-huh. Interesting. Well, let's see here. And they start writing legislation, and they start sleazing it into law, and they start sneaking it past people. And maybe they do it at the city level. Maybe they do it at the province level. Maybe they do it at the country level. But they make themselves look attractive to money. You got the money? How much money you got? Show me. Oh, you got money. Oh, money. Okay, well, you're welcome here. It's going to cost you a lot of money, but you got the money, so you're welcome, right? Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, they'll do it. You think South Africa, who wants to live in South Africa? Elon Musk is from South Africa, my friend. So was Peter Thiel, as far as I know. And so, they could go back, right? And who knows what they're doing? They may be in South Africa, at least with their lawyers, and they're passing these bills, right? Can't sue me because I did something. Yeah, you can't extradite me because some other country has a law. Can't come after me and my money because whatever. You can't. And Argentina, same thing. Peter Thiel's already there. What do you think he's doing there? You think he's just, drinking the mimosas and watching the sunset in the evening? No, he's not. He's paving the way. He's down there in Argentina paving the way for all his buddies. Gonna pave the way. Big apartment complexes. You need your second home in Argentina as a getaway, right, as a hidey hole. So they have luxury condos going up like this, and There are 40 floors, and each floor belongs to one person. So you got 40 oligarchs living in this 40-story condo, and each floor is like 10,000 square feet or more, maybe 20,000 square feet. Indoor theaters, indoor gym, indoor pool, right? Luxury condos, a helicopter pad on the roof, right? Walled perimeter, guards, guard dogs, all this kind of stuff, right? You got $50 million in personal assets, so you spend $10 million buying a floor in this condo that Peter Thiel set up, Thiel Estates or something like that, right? Or Getaway Estates or Oligarchic Estates or whatever he wants to call it. And he's down there greasing the wheels, baby. They're running. They're on the run. I called it. 8 months ago, I called it. 10 months ago, I called it. They're on the run. And they know exactly where they're running to. And everybody who thinks, I hear this all the time in comments, wherever I am, looking at comments on a YouTube video or something else, a Substack, and like, we're going to go after these rich people and they're going to suffer. No, I don't think so. No, they're not. And you're not doing that either. No, you think you are. You're not doing anything of the kind. They're on the run because they know what I know. Now, maybe they didn't think it was going to happen as soon as it's happening, but here we are. The world is on fire, and the elites, the oligarchs, the moneyed people are now on the run. Good luck. Good luck to these folks. I hope it works out for them. I mean, I don't really care, right? Either way. Someone has to survive. Let's just be honest about this, okay? A lot of people are going to die. So we can't have everybody die. So maybe the elites inherit the earth. Maybe they're the ones that survive and get to tell the story. Oh, and also, here's the important part. The elites who survive get to write the history books. Just like the white settlers in America got to write the history books of North America and the move west. And when they wrote the history books about the conquering of North America and the westward expansion, they left out all the genocide. They left it out. And you read a history book about the U.S. and there's nothing in there about the genocide of the Indians, because the winners write the history books. They don't want to talk about that. So when the elites end up in Argentina, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, maybe a couple of other places, maybe some Scandinavian countries, right? Oh, that might work. Could be, and that might work. Or parts of Canada, maybe there's parts of Canada that get carved out. Possibly even the state of Alaska gets carved out, right? So the oligarchs have their places they head to. Their island nations or quasi-island nations, places that are isolated. And they get to write the history books. And none of this will have happened. None of it. As far as they're concerned, the Earth was always like this. It always had high CO2 levels in the atmosphere. It always had, demolished cities, ghost towns, and the only sign of human occupation is the bones that got left behind, which even those don't last very long, right? We know how that is. So they'll write the history books, and they'll say whatever they want to say about the Earth and what happened to the Earth, because they're going to win, and they're already making sure that legally they can't lose. They can't lose, and they're not going to lose. What's your responsibility in all this? Well, you have a couple of things you need to keep in mind, a couple of things you need to do. First of all, you need to realize that the elites have called it. It's over. And they're looking for places to escape to. And if the place they want to escape to isn't exactly perfect for them, they're going to change that. All right? You follow me? Because they need to get out. They need to get the hell out. And they make sure they have a place to go. And even if they're not going this year, they might have to go next year. And that's the move they're making. And you need to understand that, because that's what they're doing. And then you have to ask yourself, well, what is it that they are running from? I wonder what that could be. Why did Peter Thiel, one of the richest men in the world, right? What? I mean, like he's surely in the top 30 richest men on earth. Why would he, interesting, why would he go to Argentina of all places. Huh. Interesting. Wonder what he's worried about. Huh. I wonder what's coming for the rest of us. Huh. I wonder. Okay, that's your responsibility. Start paying attention. Because if the wealthy are creating wealthy enclaves for themselves, places they can escape to, then, and you can't do that. I mean, if you're one of the wealthy, I guess you can make that plan for yourself. But if you're not one of those people, and you probably aren't, I'm not, then you have to ask yourself, so what am I watching out for? What do I think? What could it be? Do I see any evidence around me that they would also notice, and that I can notice this as easily as them? And so wonder what it is that they are running away from, that they're going to do all this stuff, including passing legislation in New Zealand. What are they running away from that I maybe should be paying attention to? And I'll tell you what they're running away from. Global heating. And they're also running away from responsibility for that. They don't want anyone coming after them. For them personally, like to throw them in a cell somewhere or to hassle them with lawsuits, but they also don't want you coming for their money or blaming them for anything. Like they don't want anyone to know that they were associated with any of this, which is what discovery is for. What discovery does during a lawsuit is like, okay, so who is responsible for this? Here was the CEO, here was the board of directors, here was the financial governing, here's the investment banker. They don't want their names anywhere on any of this. No, nothing. They don't want any discovery. They don't want their names. They don't want to be witnesses. They don't want to be called before a judge. They don't want to have to give testimony. Nothing that could end up in a history book or a headline. They don't exist. And yeah, there's about 8,000 people who right now as I make this video are thinking, I exist. I need to change that. They don't want anything to do with this. And there's about another, 50, 60, 100,000 people who are adjacent to that. And so it's a small number of people. And they're all going to end up in isolated places that will accommodate them without question. Show me your money. Yep, that's money. All right, you're welcome. What do you need? Anything you need. Just bring your money. And it's going to work. It's totally going to work. And you think it won't. And you think you're going to get justice. And you think they're afraid. They're not. So because they're not afraid, they're not going to stop doing what they're doing. They're just going to go balls to the walls. And nothing is going to stop them. No fear of anything. They've already got their hidey hole. They've got their safe house in New Zealand. And they've got their safe environment in New Zealand. And they don't care what you think. And they don't care what you're going to do later. And they don't care what you find out and when you find it out. Or who you're going to blame. Or what you're going to think about that. They don't care about any of that. Because they're gone. They're gone. So, if you need more evidence that I'm not completely insane, now you have it. Courtesy of New Zealand. And the entire Parliament of New Zealand thinks I'm right. Yeah. Validation feels good, okay? Validation is good. And I'm sorry that it came down to all this. And I'm sorry that it's not going to work. But it's not going to work. I mean, it's going to work for them. They're making sure of that. But for the rest of us, no, it's not going to work. It's coming. It's here. They're getting out. The rats are abandoning the ship. They're going to get the last lifeboat, and they're going to sail off into that beautiful sunset where they get to write the history books and write us out. We have been written out. And the only advice I have for you is the usual advice I have. And you're seeing now this beginning to become critical. All right? It was a joke before, and now it's not so much of a joke. And the advice I have for you, the only advice I have for you is don't die. You think I'm joking, don't you? I'm not. Don't die.